Right, so you wanted to learn more about the criminal justice system, right? Well, buckle up because this one's a doozy. Drugs, rap music, Philly. It's got it all.
It really does sound like something you'd see on the big screen.
Oh, absolutely. This case has more twists and turns than your average crime drama. And the best part is, we're diving deep into the actual legal documents and news reports to break it all down.
Behind the scenes, just like that.
Exactly. So, are you ready to jump into the world of the original Block Hustlaz?
OBH, let's do it. I'm fascinated to see how this all unfolds.
This group was allegedly running a major drug operation right out of Philadelphia. But they weren't just your average street crew.
Right. They were also trying to make it big in the music world.
Aspiring rappers, can you believe that?
Yeah.
Led by this guy, Abdul West, who went by the stage name AR-AB.
I'm sensing a clash between art and crime here.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's this whole double life thing that makes the case so intriguing. On one hand, you have these guys allegedly slinging drugs, but then they're also spitting rhymes and dropping music videos.
And the lines start to blur, right? Like how much of their music was a reflection of their reality.
Right, and that's where things get really interesting. Because according to the documents, some of West's lyrics directly reference their alleged activities.
Oh, wow. So he's rapping about the crimes, essentially.
It's almost like he was writing his own confession in his songs. I mean, there were even details like names and locations that lined up with the actual investigation.
So did the prosecutors use those lyrics as evidence against him in court?
You bet they did. It became a key point of contention, actually. The prosecution argued that those lyrics were proof of his involvement, while the defense claimed it was just artistic expression, pure and simple.
Ah, the old art imitates life dilemma. Where do you draw the line?
Exactly. It's a tricky one, because on one hand, you've got freedom of speech, which is a fundamental right. But then there's the question of whether that right protects you when you're rapping about illegal activities, potentially incriminating yourself in the process.
It reminds me of that old saying, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. But in this case, it's more like anything you rap.
Right. And it wasn't just the lyrics either. Things took an even darker turn when investigators uncovered alleged online messages sent by West, some containing direct threats of violence.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't just talk. He was allegedly putting those threats out there for the world to see.
It seems that way. And according to the documents, those threats weren't empty words. There's evidence suggesting West may have even ordered a hit on a former associate.
A hit. Are we talking about a real-life mob movie now?
That's what it's starting to sound like. Apparently, West suspected this associate of siding with a rival group, and things escalated from there.
So what happened?
Well, I don't want to spoil too much just yet, but let's just say that this case goes way beyond your typical drug bust.
It sounds like this OBH operation was more than just a bunch of guys selling drugs. It was about power, loyalty, and some seriously dangerous consequences.
You got it. And it all played out against the backdrop of this massive drug trafficking network that stretched all the way from Philadelphia to California.
Wow, talk about a coast-to-coast operation. They weren't messing around.
They weren't, and neither were the feds. This case involved the FBI, DEA, Philadelphia police, the whole 9 yards. It was a full-court press to bring down OBH.
I bet those law enforcement agencies had their hands full with this one.
Absolutely. And one of the things they uncovered that really blew the lid off this case was a network of stash houses that OBH was using.
Stash houses, huh? Sounds like something out of a movie. What kind of stuff were we talking about here?
We're talking drugs, cash, guns, the works.
Wow, they had it all. Any specific location stand out?
Oh, yeah, there's one in particular on North Sydenham Street that was like hitting the jackpot for the feds. We're talking evidence galore.
And I'm guessing that's when the walls really started closing in on Abdul West and his crew.
You could say that. But here's the thing. Just when you thought this story couldn't get any wilder, it takes another turn. All thanks to West's attorney, Edward Meehan.
Oh, what happened? Some kind of ace lawyer move to get West off the hook?
Not quite. It turns out Meehan had a bit of a past that was about to collide head-on with this case.
I'm intrigued. What kind of past are we talking about here?
Well, let's just say that representing alleged drug lords wasn't exactly a new concept for Mr. Meehan.
Oh, really? Had he dealt with similar cases before?
Oh, you have no idea. Remember how we were talking about conflicts of interest earlier?
Right, with artists and their lyrics and the legal implications.
This is a whole other level. It turned out that Meehan had actually represented 2 other defendants involved in this very same drug trafficking ring, but before West.
You're kidding. So the lawyer had history with OBH, and not just from this one case. That's quite the entanglement.
Entanglement is an understatement.
Yeah.
And the prosecution was not about to let that slide.
I can imagine they cried foul. That's a major conflict of interest. It's
A
like,
major conflict indeed. And what happened next is, well, you'll just have to wait and see.
so get this. The judge actually allowed Meehan to stay on the case.
Wait, what? Seriously? I mean, how could that even fly with such a blatant conflict of interest? It's mind-boggling.
I know, right? But here's the kicker. It all boiled down to Abdul West himself.
West, what did he have to do with it?
Well, it turns out West was fully aware of the potential risks involved in having Meehan represent him.
He must have really trusted this guy.
That's putting it mildly. He was willing to roll the dice, even with the feds breathing down his neck and a mountain of evidence piling up against him.
Speaking of evidence, what about that raid on the Columbus Boulevard apartment? That had to be a major blow to OBH.
Oh, you better believe it. We're talking about a massive seizure, 10 whole kilograms of cocaine.
10 kilograms. Wow. That's what, like 22 pounds of cocaine?
A little more, yeah. And as if that wasn't enough, they also found 6 pounds of meth and a cool $20,000 in cash.
Man, talk about a bad day at the office. It sounds like the feds really had them dead to rights after that.
They did. And it wasn't just the physical evidence. Remember Charles Sally, West's associate?
Oh, yeah, the guy who tried to silence a witness.
A one and only. Sally was determined to protect West and OBH, even if it meant taking the law into his own hands.
And how did that work out for him?
About as well as you'd expect. He sent a threatening letter to a key witness.
A letter. Seriously.
Yeah.
You'd think in this day and age he would have at least sent a burner email or used a messaging app or something.
Right. But nope, he went full-on snail mail. He even signed it with a fake name, Ron Harvey.
Ron Harvey? That's almost comical. Did he really think that would fool anyone?
Apparently so. Needless to say, it didn't work. The FBI saw right through it.
What a disaster. So, with the drugs, the money, the witness tampering, it sounds like OBH was going down.
And they did. The trial was basically a formality at that point.
So what happened in court?
Well, some of the OBH members decided to cut their losses and plead guilty, hoping for a lighter sentence.
I can't say I blame them.
Right. But West and a few others decided to take their chances at trial.
Talk about a gamble. What were they thinking?
Who knows? Maybe they thought they could beat the odds, or maybe they just couldn't stomach the thought of a plea deal. Whatever the reason, they rolled the dice and they lost. The jury came back with a guilty verdict on multiple counts, including conspiracy to distribute controlled substances.
Wow. So that was it for OBH. Game over.
Game over. Their reign in the Philadelphia drug trade was officially over.
And then came the moment of truth sentencing. What kind of punishment did they receive?
Well, remember how West was the alleged mastermind behind this whole operation?
Yeah, the rapper turned kingpin.
Exactly. And that meant he was facing some serious time. The judge ultimately sentenced him to 45 years in prison.
45 years. That's longer than some people are even alive.
It's a hefty sentence, no doubt. Blanding and Hickson, who pled guilty, got a bit of a break in comparison.
How much time did they get?
Blanding was sentenced to 25 years, and Hickson got 20.
Still a long time to be behind bars. And what about our friend Charles Sally? Did his witness tampering scheme land him in hot water?
Oh, absolutely. He ended up pleading guilty as well and learned a hard lesson about the consequences of obstructing justice.
So in the end, everyone involved in this case had to face the music, so to speak. But yeah, this story goes way deeper than your typical drug bust.
You're right. It really makes you think about the choices we make and how they can have a ripple effect on our lives and the lives of others.
It's a reminder that actions have consequences, and that sometimes the line between right and wrong can get awfully blurry.
Well said. And it forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. But for now, let's shift our focus to the man at the center of it all, Abdul West, aka AR-Ab. His story, and the story of OBH, is a cautionary tale about the allure and the ultimate cost of a life entangled in the world of drugs and crime.
It's almost like a Greek tragedy, you know, the rise and fall of a kingpin who used music to tell his story, but that story ultimately led to his downfall.
It really is, and it makes you wonder how much of his music was a reflection of his reality versus a way to escape it, to process the darkness he was surrounded by.
It's that whole write what you know idea, right? But in West's case, what he knew was incredibly dangerous, and putting it all out there, well, it came back to bite him in a big way.
And it brings us back to that question we keep bumping up against. Can we, or should we, separate the art from the artist? Can you appreciate the music while condemning the actions?
It's a tough one. I mean, you hear the music, and there's this raw talent there, this ability to connect with people on an emotional level, But then you learn about the crimes, the violence, and it's like, man, how do you reconcile those two things?
Exactly. And it's not just a question for us as listeners, right? The legal system had to wrestle with it too. They had to decide, are these lyrics just artistic expression or are they evidence of something more, something criminal?
And in the end, the court basically said, nope, those lines are way too blurred. This isn't just art. It's part of a bigger, darker picture.
It's a cautionary tale, no doubt about it, for any artist who delves into the darker side of life in their work. There's always that line, that blurry line between what you can say and what you can't. When does freedom of expression cross over into criminal liability? There's no easy answer.
Definitely not. And it's something we all need to keep thinking about, talking about, because this isn't just about Abdul West and OBH. It's bigger than that. It's about art and responsibility and the crazy ways that crime, justice, and all of our lives intersect.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of OBH, what's sticking with you? What are you taking away from all of this?
I think for me, it's just a reminder that things are rarely as simple as they seem, especially when it comes to the criminal justice system. You see the headlines, you hear about the crimes, but there's so much more going on beneath the surface. There are human stories, complex emotions, tough questions that don't always have easy answers.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that the world isn't black and white, it's a whole lot of gray. And sometimes the most important questions are the ones that don't have a clear-cut right or wrong response.
Well said. And I think that's a good place to leave it for today. We're going to step out of the courtroom for now, maybe explore something a little less heavy next time. But for those of you who are fascinated by this whole world, the intersection of art, crime, and the law, there's a ton of stuff out there to dig into. Who knows, maybe one of you will be inspired to pick up a law textbook or two, maybe become the next Johnny Cochran. But until then, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.